Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Tonight, we're looking at a genuinely terrifying series of events that completely shattered the safety of a quiet Ohio suburb. It's one of those stories that really tests our understanding of the people we let into our everyday lives. So let's start right at the very beginning with a single moment that changed absolutely everything. Imagine the heavy, suffocating silence on a 911 operator's headset. At first, there's literally nothing on the other end of the line, just breathing. Heavy, shaking breathing. And then, an 8-year-old girl named Emily whispers these exact bone-chilling words. "I think my mom is dead, and the man is still in our house." Right after she said that, the line went completely dead. Naturally, police raced toward the home, but what they discovered inside was just a profoundly violent crime scene. Officers found 29-year-old Sarah lying on the kitchen floor amidst the obvious signs of a massive struggle. We're talking broken dishes, overturned chairs, and bloody handprints smeared across these pristine white tiles. But the killer? Well, he had seemingly vanished from the house, almost like a ghost.
Upstairs, trembling in a tiny, dark closet, they found 8-year-old Emily. Her absolute nightmare had actually begun hours earlier. She woke up at 2 a.m. to the sound of a scream and peeked out her bedroom door. But she didn't see some masked stranger. No, she saw a man standing right there in the hallway, someone familiar, a trusted family friend. For a terrifying split second, she thought he saw her, but then he just smiled, quietly closed the door, and left. Emily stayed hidden in that closet for nearly 6 hours before finally finding the courage to dial 911.
So he knew she was there. Why did he leave her alive? I want you to take a second and really let that sink in. The killer wasn't a random, opportunistic intruder. He knew the victim, and he knew a child was in the house, literally just feet away. This was the central mystery that totally baffled detectives the minute they walked in. But as you'll see, it was exactly this question that would ultimately lead investigators straight to a very dark secret Sarah had been hiding. Now, what's really interesting about how this unfolded is the hidden digital trail. Detectives did what they always do. They seized Sarah's phone and painstakingly combed through thousands of totally normal messages, emails, and call logs. On paper, she was just a single mom with a regular job and absolutely zero known enemies. But hidden away deep within her device, investigators stumbled upon a secret folder. A folder of screenshots she had been quietly saving up for months. And what they found in that folder perfectly mapped out a truly terrifying escalation. Enter Mark Reynolds. He was a close family friend, the kind of guy who showed up for birthdays, holiday dinners, you name it. At first, his texts to Sarah were completely harmless, but in the weeks prior to the murder, he morphed into this dangerously obsessed stalker. He became hyper-controlling, quick to anger, and constantly demanded to know her exact whereabouts. Then, just 2 weeks before she died, he dropped this chilling ultimatum: "If I can't have you, nobody will." Sarah hadn't gone to the police yet, but almost as if she knew she might need proof down the line, she documented every single word. So armed with these texts, detectives immediately pulled Mark in for questioning. Now, usually in an interrogation like this, you'd expect a suspect, especially a so-called family friend, to be a nervous wreck or at the very least highly emotional about a brutal murder. But Mark's reality was the exact opposite. He showed literally zero emotion. Honestly, he actually seemed annoyed to even be sitting there. He coldly claimed he hadn't seen Sarah in weeks and insisted he was home alone the night of the murder. And the thing is, there were no witnesses. At that exact moment, the police had zero hard proof tying him to the physical act.
But while Mark was playing it cool in the interrogation room, forensic analysts were still at the house, painstakingly going over the crime scene with a fine-tooth comb, just waiting to find a mistake. And they found it. A bloody, heavily damaged partial fingerprint tucked away on the underside of one of those broken kitchen chairs. It took hours of intense comparison, but they finally got the match. It was Mark Reynolds. The police finally had the concrete evidence they needed to lock down an arrest warrant.
Right, so heavily armed officers head over to Mark's apartment to finally bring him in. But when they get there, they walk into this incredibly eerie scene. The door was completely unlocked, the lights were blazing, the television was still playing some show in the background. But the apartment itself, totally empty. Mark was gone. Sitting squarely on his kitchen table was a handwritten note left right there for the police to find. It contained just 7 terrifying words. "You should have stopped looking for me. I mean, wow. In an instant, the sheer brazen confidence of those words turned what was a local murder case into a massive nationwide manhunt. As detectives started really digging into who Mark Reynolds was, they uncovered a profoundly disturbing pattern. It turns out that over the previous 10 years, bouncing across multiple states, Mark had quietly formed close relationships with several different women. And without fail, whenever those relationships ended, these women reported an identical, chilling cycle of stalking, harassment, and threats. But because they were too scared to formally report him, most of them just suffered in silence. And guys, this darkness went even deeper than anyone initially realized. Investigators actually managed to link him to a 5-year-old cold case. A woman had vanished without a trace after repeatedly telling her friends that a man was watching her. The primary suspect back then? You guessed it, Mark Reynolds. They just never had enough evidence to formally charge him, so the case went cold. Looking at Sarah's case with this new context, police suddenly realized they weren't just looking for a jealous ex-friend, they were hunting an experienced, highly dangerous predator. For nearly 3 agonizing weeks, Mark Reynolds managed to stay hidden like an absolute ghost. The manhunt stretched all across the country, but they had 0 actionable leads. That is, until one random day when a truck driver way out in rural Montana happened to catch a news broadcast. He recognized Mark's face immediately and didn't hesitate. He called the police right then and there. Almost immediately, local police and federal agents swarmed an abandoned cabin deep in the remote Montana wilderness where Mark had been hiding out. He was in there, all right, and when they ordered him to come out, he flat out refused. What followed was a highly tense, high-stakes standoff. It was incredibly volatile, but eventually officers successfully breached the cabin and managed to take him into custody without anyone else getting hurt. Now let's look at the case prosecutors assembled, because it was just an airtight, overwhelming mountain of evidence. First, his DNA perfectly matched that bloody fingerprint from the crime scene. Second, searches of his electronic devices revealed weeks of meticulous tracking. He had literally been logging Sarah's daily schedules and movements. But maybe the most chilling part? Investigators found secret photographs of both Sarah and young Emily, photos taken from outside their house in the dark. It proved absolute premeditation and an all-consuming obsession. At the trial, the prosecution laid out this damning, incredibly tragic narrative. Sarah had truly tried her best to quietly escape his obsession, and Mark simply couldn't handle losing that control over her. During the proceedings, Emily, who was now safely living with relatives, provided a recorded statement. When the jurors heard her small, fragile voice describing hiding in that closet and hearing her mother scream, the entire courtroom felt completely silent. It only took the jury a few hours of deliberation to come back with a verdict. Mark was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. A few years later, Emily actually gave a really rare interview as a young adult. And when they asked her what she remembered most from that horrific night, she didn't focus on the police or the intense trial or even the terrifying man in her hallway. Instead, she shared this one specific memory. She said, "I remember my mom telling me that if I was ever scared, I should stay quiet and survive. That advice saved my life." It's incredibly powerful. Out of this unimaginable tragedy, Emily's survival became the very first chapter of her new life. Sarah's story serves as a stark, very real-world reminder of the extreme dangers of ignoring early red flags. So, what does this all mean for us? Are we truly paying attention to the warning signs of obsession before it's too late? It's something we all really need to reflect on when we look at the behaviors of the people in our own circles. Because stalking doesn't always start with some creepy stranger hiding in the bushes. Sometimes it starts with a trusted friend sitting right there at your dinner table. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer.